live from Mesa, Arizona. It is The Drive. We will be here today, of course, because that would be weird if we weren't. We'll also be here tomorrow as well, bringing you all the coverage we can from Oakland Athletics spring training. Want to say brought to you by Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Same great services, but now with brakes, tune-ups, and tires. At select locations, visit jiffylubca.com for powerful, valuable coupons and a location near you. Jiffy Lube also sponsors our text line at 441140, our Fire Wings hotline at 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140, 21 different flavors to choose from, firewings.com. Just wing it. 3 for Madness coming up in about 12 minutes. Matt Olson, Jesus Luzardo, Marcus Simeon, and Matt Chapman. We will visit with all of them and play that for you in the 8 o'clock hour. Kyle, you called yesterday legal tampering day.
Yes.
There's a lot of movement going on.
Yeah. It's the 9 a.m. yesterday, the NFL kind of free agency floodgates opened, and unrestricted free agents are allowed to negotiate with teams, although you can't sign a new deal because technically their deals don't end until the new league year opens at 1 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow.
Raiders made 2 big moves, so let's start with them.
Yep.
I love LaMarcus Joyner.
Okay.
I like him. I like him as a player very much.
He's a good player.
Sometimes I am guilty of having players stick in my head as to who they were as opposed to where they are, especially in a game like football where players can go so downhill so quickly. For the money they spent, do you think that money was judiciously spent on LaMarcus Joyner?
Yeah, they needed safety help badly, and he was one of the top safeties available. If they weren't going to go spend the money to get an Earl Thomas type, what was the contract number for? It
was at least $100,000 a year, probably more. It was a 4-year deal with the Raiders. 4-year deal. Where is it? Because they gave me a Browns deal. I don't see what Joyner's, other than it's a 4-year deal. He played last year on the franchise tag, earned $11.28 million. This is coming on the heels of the Antonio Brown deal as well. And then they weren't done, by the way, as they gave a large contract to a large man, former San Francisco 49er draft pick, former New England Patriot Trent Brown. Your thoughts on that deal?
Yeah, 4 years, it's worth up to $66 million, but as we always talk about in the NFL, it's the guaranteed money that matters.
Sure.
$36.75 million for Trent Brown. He's the highest paid offensive lineman of all time. And there's initially the thought was he would play left tackle, and then Colton Miller, who was a rookie last year, would move to the right side. But now it looks like Brown might just play right tackle. And it'll be interesting because the reason the 49ers traded him to New England in the first place was because he wasn't athletic enough to play in Kyle Shanahan's system. He's a good player, but just wasn't going to be a long-term fit. So I'm interested to see what the Raiders' offense is going to look like with a big lumbering-type player like Brown. Like I said, good player, but not super athletic where he's going to go get out in space and make plays for you. But they, again, needed to shore up that offensive line. Derek Carr was at his best when that offensive line was dominant, and they made a move to try and make that offensive line dominant again.
6'8", 380. Some say closer to 400.
Yeah, big boy.
I don't know. How do you get past that? Like, how do
you faster?
That's it. You spin,
and his arms are so long, he gets a hand on you, you're done.
God.
Yeah.
That is it.
He's a monster.
I look at athletes like that, and I'm so happy that he found a home in the NFL. I'm so happy he's getting paid, because if he didn't play professional sports, I would hate to have his life. Just the little things, fitting into a bed, getting into a vehicle.
Right, being that tall and wide
large.
And human. Yeah, he's just big boy. But Trent Brown's last 11 months. So he got traded to the Patriots in April.
Yep.
The Patriots sent a third-round pick to the Niners for Trent Brown. He wins the Super Bowl and then gets the richest contract for an offensive lineman.
It's a pretty good year for him.
Really strong year.
Really strong year
for 25-year-old Trent Brown.
Does he deserve to be the highest paid offensive lineman of all time, or is that just the market and what it dictates?
I think that's just the market.
Right place, right time.
Quan Alexander yesterday, the guy the Niners signed, the
Let's
linebacker.
shift over there then. The 49ers big signing yesterday, Quan Alexander from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
It was 4 years, $54 million, $27 million guaranteed. And there's this big freak out that they made him the highest paid linebacker of all time. But literally later that day, Anthony Barr, and then early this morning, C.J. Mosley, two linebackers, both got paid more than he did.
Sure. It's just
and
the nature
all of a
of the
sudden,
market.
if Quan Alexander didn't get signed yesterday, and those two guys got signed at their contracts, and then Alexander's deal came in at 4 years, 54, it's like, oh, that's reasonable. Like, that's just the market now. You can't react to free agent contracts as soon as they're announced.
Do you think the NFL salary cap could be doubled and the game would stay the same and the teams would still be profitable?
Yeah.
I feel that way too.
I think the salary cap is kind of a joke. Not so much the idea of it, not so much the idea of a hard cap, but the fact that it's $188 million, you could make it $400 million.
Right.
And the NFL would still make plenty of money.
Why is Quan Alexander a good signing for the 49ers?
He might not be.
Okay. Why? Okay.
So best case scenario, he's a will linebacker. You need your will linebacker to be fast.
Explain to people what a will linebacker is.
Oh, sorry. It's the weak side linebacker. So the linebacker who lines up next to the middle linebacker, the Mike linebacker, which is Fred Warner.
Yep.
He'll line up on the weak side, the side the tight end is not on. And so he needs to be fast. He typically covers tight ends when they come across. Sometimes he gets passed off to wide receivers. He has to cover running backs. You have to be able to cover, and he can do that. He's a very good athlete. He's extremely fast. And he's just a playmaker on defense. He misses some tackles, which is a bit of a problem, but he's a sideline-to-sideline player, and he's 2 years younger than Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
And so they're giving him a lot of money. He's coming off an ACL tear, which is where all the questions come in. He tore his ACL in October of last year, but one of the big things with Quan Alexander was when he went down, the Bucs locker room was like devastated.
Sure.
He was such a leader on their defense and a passionate, fiery player, and you could see why the 49ers front office has shown they fall in love with stuff like that. They love guys who love football.
Sure.
And so they're going to overlook the missed tackles because, hey, this guy's a culture fit. He's extremely smart, really instinctive player. Mm-hmm. And if he can get back to being the athlete that he was before the ACL tear, I think the Niners have a really solid young linebacker.
You said the 49ers fall in love with players like that. The 49ers also kind of have a history of falling in love with players with ACL tears.
Yeah, geez.
That was a big Harbaugh and what's-his-face deal.
So
Trent Baalke.
three key contributors for the Niners next year is Jimmy Garoppolo, Jerick McKinnon, and Quan Alexander all tore their ACLs between September 1st and October 22nd.
Let's just sort of, because this is going to be in the news a lot. We try to do this a couple times a year. Let's just continue real quick, football 101. So you talked about what a will linebacker is, talked about what a Mike linebacker is. So what is a Sam?
That's a strong side linebacker. They're going to line up off the other side of the tight end, so the strong side.
And you'll occasionally hear the position elephant. Explain that as well.
That's the Leo. It's sometimes called the Leo, or like it's the speed rusher, basically, that's lined up wide of the offensive tackle. So it's the defensive end, basically.
So Quan Alexander is a risk, but was this the right move? I saw you tweet yesterday that 49er fans were anxious for the 49ers to do something and spend money. And then when they spent money, Niner fans were saying don't. Yeah. Is there sometimes amongst fans, and this isn't a rip on fans at all, it's just there are different levels of fans as far as how much they choose to donate time and effort to understanding the game. Do sometimes line players, especially offensive line players, you would think, people see the Raiders signing Antonio Brown, and they can understand yards and touchdowns and all of that. Yeah. And then they see Quan Alexander and go, my God, all this money for this guy. How is that really going to translate into this team being better on the field, even if he's healthy and playing well?
Yeah, because a lot of – and this isn't a knock. Like, you and I and people who are deep, like, football fans, it's like weird. But for people who most of their football fandom comes from fantasy football – and Madden.
Yeah, you're not drafting Quan Alexander on your fantasy football team.
So what the Niners did was they went out, and at the time they knew, I'm guessing they surveyed the market, and they said, okay, Anthony Barr is going to get 16 or 17 million a year, and then C.J. Mosley got 5 and 85 from the Jets. They were looking at that and going, all right, if we try and wait on Quan Alexander, we're going to have to pay him closer to what those guys are making.
Right.
And so they went in and they just made him the highest paid linebacker by, I think, like $1 million or $1.5 million. And all of a sudden it looks like a fine deal based on what the market looks like.
Trent Brown, Lamarcus Joyner. We talked about Jonathan Hankins briefly yesterday. Antonio Brown, Eric Harris, Denzel Good. Some of those re-signed, some of those brought over. Is Mike Mayock, in your opinion, showing on, and obviously John Gruden, but is Mike Mayock putting on a good showing so far? Are you ready to give him a grade, or do you need to wait and see?
No, you obviously have to wait and see how all these free agents work out, but the Raiders had massive holes that they needed to address, and they went out and did it, and they did it with young players. Lamarcus Joyner is not old. Trent Brown is not old, and they wanted a team that they could take to Vegas and compete with, and conceivably, these two guys should be key contributors on a team when they go to Vegas next year or in 2 years.
Last question for you. Quan Alexander, ultimately, yes, he's a good player. Yes, he can be a very good player. Yes, there's a risk with his health and with his knee. But ultimately, with some of that money they paid to Quan Alexander, was that a fine for Reuben Foster? Was that Reuben Foster money?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. Looking at Reuben Foster's off-field problems in the scope of football, yeah, that was a Reuben Foster tax. Like, they took a risk moving up to number 31 to draft him, and then they had to part ways with him because he had his domestic violence issues. And now they're in a position where they need a long-term answer at that linebacker spot, and so they had to pay for one.
49ers have a lot of money and draft capital invested in that defense.
Yep.
And I think it's okay for Niner fans to expect that defense to perform well.
Yeah, they're going to use probably the number 2 pick on another defensive player this year.
Yeah.
If they are bad on defense again this year,
that's
they've got
problems. We'll take a break. We are down in Mesa, Arizona, home of the Oakland A's spring training. Sun's coming up. You can see what my dad just told me looks like a skating rink behind us with the white tarp on the field. You can watch that at KHTK.com. When we come back, 3 for Madness time. We're going to get Kyle's grades on both the Niners and the Raiders. And is it time to call it a day on the playoffs for your Sacramento Kings? We'll get to all that next. Sports 1140 KHTK. Brought to you by Fire Wings. 21 different flavors to choose from. Firewings.com. Just wing it. Kyle Madsen at the Kyle Madsen Traveling Sports Desk in Mesa, Arizona. Question number 1. I have not seen these questions. These are all surprises to me.
Oh, okay, good. Grade the Niners getting Quan Alexander.
Wow, we just spent like an entire segment on that. Great question,
Yeah, geez, unbelievable.
We did not give grades, though. I'm going to give this a good, solid B plus. Points you made. This is a spot they absolutely needed to fill. This is the Reuben Foster tax. On the field, if he's healthy, it's a fantastic move. The question here is twofold. Number 1, is there going to be an injury issue? Obviously, that's the first thing. And secondly, will the production you get out of Quan Alexander at that position, is that money best spent at that position? And will that translate to filling the hole that you so need to fill for these 49ers? So, unfortunately, you can give a grade right now, which is B, but in my opinion, we're not going to be able to really see that until we see it translate onto the field.
Yeah, that's why I'm giving it a C for now. I think the value on the contract is fine, but that injury concern is massive.
Yep.
Like there's a very serious concern that he might come back and just not be the athlete he was, and you're going to run into another kind of Malcolm Smith situation where he battles injuries throughout his contract. But if he does come back fully healthy, like you're getting a very solid player who made a Pro Bowl 2 years ago.
Right.
He's still just 24. There's the missed tackle issue, which is a massive issue. He's missed more tackles than anyone since he got into the league in 2015, and that's partly because he gets to so many players because he is so instinctive and fast, but his percentage of missed tackles is also very, very high.
Sure.
So he's still just 24, though. That can be coached out of him. And hopefully the Niners see something they can work with and can turn him back into a very good player, Pro Bowl caliber player.
Question number 2.
Grade the Raiders getting Lamarcus Joyner and Trent Brown.
Okay, so I'm going to give this a good B plus.
Okay.
I do like these moves. I'm always a big fan of shoring up your offensive line. And you know that about me. I think that's one of the most underrated moves in sports. I love offensive line. I love it when people go, wow, this running back came out of nowhere. Oh, this quarterback's having a tremendous year, and they don't look a little bit deeper and go, oh, they spent $80 million on their offensive line. There's a reason. I'm a huge fan of that, and I also enjoy LaMarcus Joyner. I think he's a great player. I like that addition, not just play but attitude to the Raiders' defense. Now, I will change this to an A-A, though. If the Raiders can somehow take every penny out of that piggy bank and end up landing Le'Veon Bell, now all of a sudden that makes that Trent Brown acquisition even more fun, especially when you're protecting and hopefully giving time to Derek Carr to get downfield. That will all of a sudden create an extremely interesting year for this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to give it an A for now because LaMarcus Joyner, maybe he's not a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro, but he's a better player than anybody in that Raiders secondary. They needed to be better at that spot. And they got better with a high-quality starter in the NFL. So props to them there. And like I said, they need Derek Carr to be good. And he was at his best when he wasn't on his back every play, which surprisingly, same goes for most quarterbacks. So they went out and they got the best available offensive lineman. And I'm guessing they'll address that spot in the draft as well because they need to keep Derek Carr upright. And going out and getting Trent Brown will help with that.
Spoiler alert, taken away from our NFL preview coming up in a few months, I think Derek Carr's going to have a really good year.
Okay.
I think Derek Carr's going to have a very good year.
Okay.
A very good year.
Okay.
Not an MVP year.
Okay.
But a very good year.
All right. Hopefully he gets that yards per attempt above 7.
I think that would be good.
It'd be a good start.
What are Tom Brady's yards per attempt?
A lot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really? Air yards?
His yards per... What are you talking about? His yards per attempt?
Weren't we talking about Tom Brady's air yards last year and how easy they were?
I think that you're getting two stats mixed up.
No, yards per attempt as far. You're talking yards per attempt as far as like how far he throws the ball, right?
No.
What am I talking about?
Efficiency. I'm talking about efficiency.
Oh no, I'm talking about like literally how far he throws the ball down the field.
No, that doesn't matter to me. I don't care about that.
You're talking about. Oh, I see. You're talking about
how many yards versus how many attempts.
Okay. Well,
7 is like the threshold of
Tom
good.
Brady's
He's
very
below
Tom Brady's very efficient.
He is. 7.5 yards per attempt for his career. That's really good.
Question 3.
I didn't have it up because I was looking at Tom Brady's yards per attempt.
Way to be prepared.
Is it time to call it a day on the Kings making the playoffs? Dave, are you still on the playoff line?
It is time to call it a day on the Kings playoff hunt. Wait. But it is not time to call it a night.
Oh my God, you are the worst.
Let me explain what I mean. Oh. You know that moment when you're looking at the you're looking at the horizon, and there's like that line of sun on the horizon, but it hasn't gone down yet. The day is over. Okay. But there is a sliver of sunshine.
When you wrote this,
yes.
you thought of this
really
and then
did.
wrote the question.
No, it's really stupid. It's not good enough. There is a sliver of sunshine left. But my good. Hey,
I'm gonna let you guys do this.
I'm gonna play the same game. I try to play with Kyle sometimes. Jay, yes or no answer. Is it mathematically impossible for the Kings to make the playoffs this season? Okay. So there is a sliver of hope remaining.
You're the worst.
There is what can I listen? Okay, let me.
Captain, I'm just being real here.
I am being.
You can say I'm not a fan, but I'm just being realistic. I'm being realistic.
I am being realistic.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Because
you're
here's
looking
the
at
thing.
the math.
No,
you're looking at math.
You're putting words into my mouth. Here's why.
I'm being realistic. This team's probably going to start 3-17.
Ask me if I think the Kings will make the playoffs.
Are you thinking the Kings will make the playoffs?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I would bet heavy money against it.
Okay.
Yes. Do you know the King? Okay, Okay. And you're going to say.
I think you need to put. You guys need to bet on this.
Very simple. Let me make my point. Jay, if the Kings make the playoffs this year, because you know they won't, right? Okay, if the Kings make the playoffs this year, will you quit radio forever? Will you say that on the air right now? Okay.
Whoa.
Okay. All right.
Whoa.
Hey, man, put his job where his mouth is. I got to respect that. I fully believe they're not going to make the playoffs this year, and I'm not going to wait until they're mathematically eliminated. Sorry, Jay. I know we had a break. My bad. But Stranger things have happened
All
is
right.
all I'm saying in sports.
Okay.
Remember the Cardinals? We'll take a break. When we come back,
This
Jay
man went from 3-17 to they're still in it.
When we come back, let's see, 7:35. We'll get into the Kings and Wizards. Jay and Kyle will continue to lament how badly their Lakers have been doing this year, and we'll get into the rest of the NBA right here on Sports. I was seeing if you were listening. Sports 1140 KHTK.
It's The Drive on Sports 1140 KHTK.
I gotta get my guy Damian Barling on the air with us at some point.
We can make that happen right now.
I don't know what he's doing. Damian, if you're listening,
Probably
call in.
exercising.
Yeah, he's probably exercising. Yeah, doing crunches, eating a quinoa bowl. Greek yogurt. No, Greek yogurt's not vegan.
I'm not making fun of anything Damien eats because I've eaten with Damien multiple times, and every time it's been delightful.
Yeah, but you also get salted caramel.
Yeah, because I know what tastes good, man.
We are down here in Mesa, Arizona, home of the Oakland Athletics spring training. We'll be bringing you multiple A's coming up here in about a half an hour. I want to say thank you so much to Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Same great services as Jiffy Lube, but now with brakes, tune-ups, and tires at select locations. Visit JiffyLubeCA.com for valuable, powerful coupons, Kyle, at a location near you. If you get a chance, at Jiffy Lube Sac on Twitter, tell them thank you, because it's because of them that we're getting this awesome coverage down here and bringing it back to you. So we'll get to the A's at 8:05. I like Damien, and Damien and I agree on plenty of things, but my goodness, do we really disagree on this Kings season. I just don't want to I don't want to misquote him, but we're going back and forth on Twitter right now, and it's good-natured, so everybody relax. But the Kings lost last night, so let's look at that loss in a vacuum. They lost to a bad Wizards team. Now, granted, the Wizards had a better home record than the Kings did. It's not like they lost to the Suns. They lost to a Wizards team that has a better home record. They're no slouches at home is what I'm trying to say. But it's a game you have to win if you want to make the playoffs. And it's a game the Kings probably should have won. The game was there for the taking, and the Kings have lost 7 of 10. This is certainly shaping up to be a disappointing, right? I'm choosing my words carefully, end of the season. I don't have any problems with people being upset at last night's loss. I don't have any problems with people being disappointed that this team will likely not make the playoffs. I know, of course, I feel the exact same way, man. I was watching at a local establishment here yesterday with a couple of old friends. One of which is I think you've met him, our buddy who's a Major League umpire down here, umping games, huge Kings fan, lives in Lincoln. And the other, my old friend Craig Amazine, who used to be the VP of broadcast and all that for the Kings back in the day.
He runs a online shopping website, Amazon.com.
Oh, jeez, really? I mean, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get a ding. No,
I do.
No,
I do get a ding.
You do not get a ding for that.
I need a ding. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Come on.
And after the game, I was slapping the back of my chair. I had to walk around. I was pissed. I was yelling at the TV. All that. What I absolutely, I can't understand this line of thinking. When if you are a fan or a person who has watched this team.
Or a person.
Well, I mean, even I had Damien in my head, and I know Damien's a fan, but I also want to say he covers the team as well, much like we do. And you have watched this team since 2005 or longer, and you have seen the John Salmonses and Jimmer Fredette's and Quincy. Marcus Thornton, Quincy Doobie, my guy Francisco Garcia, my guys Jason Thompson and Dante Green.
Jimmer Fredette.
I think I started with Jimmer. All those guys.
Jimmer.
Who Spencer Hawes, thank you. You've seen those years, and the way those years have gone and the way those years have ended. Heck, you don't really need to go that far. Just go back to last year.
Right.
This time last year, I was screaming for this team to lose every single game, to tank. I had Tank Commander as my Twitter handle. I was pissed anytime they won, and I was getting killed for that. And I understand that logic. I understand why people would get mad at a Kings fan saying, I want this team to lose. But I want them to lose for a good future. It's always about this team rebounding and doing well. You go into the season, everyone has them between 20 and 25 wins. I think Vegas was 24.5 to 25.5. They're going to – they may not make the playoffs, but it would take a collapse for them to not win 40 games plus this year. They're going to flirt with 500 or be a game under, a game above is what I think the sweet spot is, 41 to 43 wins. I cannot understand how you can go from a probable 24-25 wins to, let's just call it 40 on the low end. An improvement of 15 to 16 games with a team that has a core of 21-year-old De'Aaron Fox, 19-year-old Marvin Bagley, who, by the way, skipped his senior year to play 1 year at Duke. You could really look at Marvin Bagley as a straight-out-of high school guy if you just want to go year by year. A core of a guy like Harry Giles, who's missed 2 years plus because of knee injuries. And now bringing in Harrison Barnes. Buddy Hield, who's right in line for most improved player. You look at the expectations that we had, and then 6 short months later, the reality that we're looking at. Nobody expected this going into next year.
Sure.
And people make the point, well, there's no guarantee we're going to make the playoffs. Well, of course, there's no guarantee we're going to make the playoffs next year. But if you've watched enough basketball over the years, you have seen, whether it's the Warriors, whether it's LeBron and the Cavs back in the day, or the Celtics, that Pistons team that won it, even teams that haven't won it, teams like Houston, teams like Oklahoma City, teams that have started young and progressed. You know how to recognize when a team's on the right track. I think Kings fans should be really pissed about losing the game last night. I am. But I also don't understand how Kings fans aren't pushing their chairs back and going, if I look at the season from 30,000 feet in the air, I am ecstatic. I am really excited, and I am looking forward to next year.
And I think a lot of people will get there eventually.
I think a lot of people are already there, to be fair.
Yeah. I want you to try something. After the next Kings game. Don't go on Twitter.
I tried that last night. I almost made it too. If you look at my tweets, they didn't really. I made one tweet at the very end of the game. I went, well,
although I guess you get mentions and stuff, but I think that we've mentioned this before, but people have their knee-jerk reactions to the game, and they're typically very angry. They're the chair slapping and pacing around the establishment of tweets. Like,
sure,
this is garbage, and it's swear words, and it's this and that. But I think once that person wakes up the next day or going into this offseason, they're going to look and go, you know what? That was a good year. Things are positive. Things are positive moving forward for the first time in forever. Now, if somebody's going to look at the season and go, this is a failure because they didn't win a championship.
Right.
As something you brought up at the top, Damian. That was Damian Barling.
And to be fair, I think his point was, it's a failure that they don't make the playoffs. But then he also said, I think 29 other teams are going to consider this season a failure. I think implying you got to win a title.
Yeah, and I think all 30 teams are going to tell you at the start of the season, like, yeah, championship is our goal, and it should be.
Championship is our goal is a far different sentence.
No, okay, but
it's a failure if we don't win it.
Right, I understand. But
I know
if you take each season just in itself, the 2018-19 basketball season is all that exists in basketball.
Sure.
Then yeah, you failed if you don't win a championship. But the fact is it doesn't go like that. At least for me, that's not how I view it. I don't think you can look at this King season and say they failed, because going into this year, you and I talked about we wanted to see growth from De'Aaron Fox, growth from Buddy Hield.
Yep.
We wanted to see Marvin Bagley get minutes and produce. And we've seen all of those things.
And then some.
To a level that I don't think I don't think a lot of people saw coming.
Absolutely.
So as far as the boxes that I wanted them to check this year, they've checked like all of them.
And then checked a few boxes we didn't even put on the piece
Correct.
of paper. I understand. I think sometimes fans and even people that cover this team confuse reality with how the players in the locker room should feel. If you're a player in the locker room, you should want to win a championship every year. And if you don't win a championship, that should bother you and get you all year long.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. That is how a player should feel. Players should want to win every single game. A player should never think about tanking. And a player should never think about 3 and 4 nights, all that. That's the job of the coaching staff, the general managers, and then for the fans to analyze. And from a fan point of view, there is no metric, there is no sane way of thinking. If you were a Kings fan and you looked at the beginning of the season and you said, you know what? We don't win a championship. This is a failure.
Right.
It's like no sane way of thinking that. And if that's how you think, and I'm not saying this to be a D-bag. I'm saying this truly, I truly feel this way as almost, I'm saying this mercifully. If you're a Kings fan, and I'm just talking to Kings fans, and you look at this year as a failure, you really shouldn't watch that. Like, seriously, you should move on. Like, you should not, you should take a couple more years off and come back when hopefully, knock on wood, they're competing for a championship. Because next year, expectations go up. And if we're sitting here, you remember last year, you were trying to talk me off the ledge when I was losing it on Vlade, I was losing it on Yeager, I was losing it on Vivek, and this whole thing, this team is a garbage fire, they suck, I was still pissed about the Cousins trade, that whole deal. People were trying to talk me off the ledge, I was losing it at this time of year the other way. And now I'm sitting here, I'm like, guys, let's be positive, but here's why. Now, next year, if we're in the same spot next year, and we're 2-3, we miss the playoffs next year, that's going to be a failure of a season to me.
Yes.
Because you're older, you're wiser, you have to show progression. Now, if they make the playoffs next year, if they're an 8 or a 7 seed, let's say, they get bounced out of the first round, not a failure. That's progression. And then the next year, I need them to be a 6-5. I need progression. As long as there is legit progression, that's a positive season for me.
Sure. And one of the things I think that's important in this discussion is it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, there's plenty that's gone wrong this season.
Right.
We talked about Bogdan earlier and some of the issues he's had. The Kings have had some really bad issues closing out games. They had that weird loss in Phoenix. Like, they're multiple times they've had victories that they've just let go inexplicably. And those aren't things that you're going, wow, this is a long-term issue, but you have to mark them down and go, hey, we need to watch this going forward. Like, Bogdan Bogdanovic was supposed to be a key cog in this.
I think this has been a bad year for him.
It has been. So that's something to monitor going forward, for sure. Like I said, that closing games issue. We said, they're going to have trouble with that this year. When it happens, we'd say, they're going to learn from this. Well, how do they learn from this? How do they adapt?
And by the way, to your point, isn't not being able to close games basically the number one hallmark of a young team competing for the first time in that capacity as a team?
Typically, yeah.
Like, literally the number one thing is finding ways to lose in the last few minutes versus finding ways to win. That's why the Warriors can be down by freaking 15 going into the fourth, and here we go, Warriors, and they end up winning by 9. Right. They've been there. They've had to go through that.
Sure.
And when it comes to quick turnarounds, here's an example of what would be a failure. The Miami Heat, when they got LeBron James and Chris Bosh to join Dwayne Wade, that was free agency help. Yeah, you're damn right they better compete or win a title. And that first year they lost to the Mavericks, and then they won a couple of titles. The Kings didn't have the benefit. There was no Durant, James, Chris Bosh coming over here. Their big free agent signing was what? Bielitsa?
Yeah.
They're not playing on that same playing field. You're talking about a predominantly homegrown team with a super young core that, again, I'll use the analogy I use with Damian, like a baby. If your baby's starting to walk and it's teetering and it's taking a step and you're like, come on, baby, you can do it, baby, come on. And every parent's been there, come on, baby. And then the baby just sits on its ass and falls down. You're not going to slap the baby. You're not going to be like, baby, you got to want it, baby. You got to want it. This baby is a failure.
Yeah.
You know what? If you can't walk to me, it's a failure. It is an absolute failure, baby. I need to sign a new baby.
In the literal definition of a failure, that baby did fail to walk.
Yes, I'll concede that. It is, if you want to go literal, Did the baby? Yes or no? Did the baby complete the
succeed?
walk?
It
No.
did not.
Failure.
Right.
Right. In the literal definition. But my goodness, is that going to be a real sad life if that's how you choose to look at the baby?
But the Kings are now in a position where, okay, so I don't think they're going to make the postseason this year. I think they're one of the best 16 teams in the league. Not going to make the postseason this year. But now they're in a spot where, dude, there's no more, hey, we just need growth this year. Next year, if they're losing close games, if they're blowing 10-point leads with 2 minutes left at home,
correct,
there are very serious problems.
We're going to have expectations next year for the first time in well over a decade.
Yeah.
That's a whole new animal. And we talked about it yesterday. They're going to start out the year going to India, coming back, adjusting from that. We don't know what the schedule looks like, and I certainly don't want to put preordained excuses in anybody's head, but there's going to be a level of expectation. By the way, we don't know what they're doing in free agency. For all we know, they're going to land a nice free agent for the first time ever, and there's going to be even more expectations on this team.
Sure.
They got to make, to me, they're a playoff team next year, and I don't care what other teams do. If they're not a playoff team next year, call me. I will be the first person to say, yeah, they took a step backwards, which means it's a failure. To me, a failure season is you didn't step or you took a step backwards.
Sure.
And I don't think there's any situation where anybody can look at this team objectively and think anything other than they didn't take a step forward. They took a leap forward. Their win-loss turnaround this year is going to be amongst the best in the league. That's the metric. If it's all about winning, then that's your metric.
And now they're in an echelon of team, though, where these they're just learning, they're just young. Like, that's not going to fly anymore.
Right.
And you understand why some people, some fans, earlier this year to put them into that realm and said, hey, this team needs to figure it out this year. And it's like, okay, if that's unrealistic, that's fine. But they're there. Like, they're there next year.
Sure. And that's a natural progression.
Yes.
Well, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the Warriors didn't win the championship.
They did.
The first year they began to succeed.
Second-round exit, then a first-round exit.
Yeah. So it happens. I think Michael Jordan got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs a few times. Was that failure? In his mind, it was, and that's fine.
And that's why he's the greatest.
In
so basically,
his
you're short-selling the Kings by not calling this a failure.
I got a guy getting noisy on. We'll get some of these texts. A lot of your texts on the Jiffy Lube text line. I got a guy getting noisy. I always love. I love when this default happens. And this is one of those texts I should ignore. By the way, I'm going to say that.
Good. This is always a good.
Been a season ticket holder since 1985. I have every single right to feel frustrated. Obviously, you don't pay for tickets. Well, first off, this is what I say, and this is where I sound like a D-bag. If you want to lay out credentials as far as investment in this team, and you want to lay your credentials out against my credentials, I'm happy to do that. If you want to question my credentials as far as being a fan of this team and living and dying with this team, I happily welcome that. Just because you buy season tickets and sit in your seat doesn't make you any more or less of a fan. Screw me. Any more or less of a fan than some Kings fan in Colorado who's got the NBA League Pass and lives and dies with this team every single day. I always hate that. I appreciate and respect season ticket holders. They're the lifeblood of this fan base.
Sure, and I want to. Nobody's trying to say, because I did my whole little thing last night, and I finished it with a GIF from Reno 911,
right?
Saying like I'm the fan police. Like, you can feel however you want. You can say.
Of course you can.
You can say
you
whatever
have a right.
You want.
Yes.
Yeah. But trying to zoom out and be like, okay, let's because I'm not a Kings fan. My Kings relationship has to do with what we talk about on the show. I want to see them succeed because they're extremely likable.
Sure.
But I'm not, like, I don't get angry and upset when they lose. I think I can objectively say, like, this has been a very good year for them. This is the first time ever. I listen to, like, national NBA podcasts. This is the first time ever they've talked about the Kings in any sense other than, Sacramento, am I right?
Yeah, that being a national punchline.
They are now a, like, hey, I watch the Kings on League Pass all the time. Hey, the Kings are really close. Hey, we want the Kings in the playoffs over the Spurs because nobody wants to see the Spurs. We want to see the Kings. Mm-hmm. Like, that's progress. But now, like I said, now we're reaching a point where, dude, this offseason, it's not going to be like, man, if they can get to 500, they can compete for a playoff spot. Like, nah, man, they got to be in the playoffs next year.
Every single person listening and every single person online, every single person who decides to participate in this team has a right to feel however they want. And I'll defend that right to my death, like the one guy in the Revolution that defended things. But but you also have the right, I guess, to sit in the middle of Doko in a diaper and rub poop on your face. Like, I don't think that's illegal as long as you're doing it to yourself.
I think that's for sure illegal. Yeah.
Okay, just sit in the middle. Okay, let me find it. All right. Okay, sit in the middle of Doko in a diaper and just mess yourself constantly, right? Like, you have a right. I think that's legal.
I think that's public.
In a diaper?
If you're just.
How are you going to tell?
Oh, you mean fully clothed?
No, yeah, you're in a diaper. Well, no, you don't even. You can wear a T-shirt and a diaper. One of them big Depends. You can't.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be wearing pants. I'm pretty sure that's legal.
You can't walk around in a diaper. What's the difference between that walking around in a bathing suit? It's a diaper. I mean, I get there's a difference. Okay, can I make my damn point?
Yes.
You have a right to do certain things. But that doesn't mean that when you do them, they're not embarrassing looking.
Sure.
I think it's embarrassing, especially from this guy I just talked about who's, if you're a season ticket holder since 1985,
you've seen it.
You've seen it all. Not only have you seen the losses, not only have you seen the punchlines and the embarrassments, you've seen Jerry fainting. You've gone through Bobby Hurley. You've gone through the tragedy of Ricky Berry. You've gone through not just losing, but the real heartbreak of this team that goes beyond the court. If you've been there since then, those are the ones I really can't stand. Because you look at this season, and you're not coming out of this season feeling hopeful, feeling encouraged, feeling sad that we didn't make the playoffs, wishing that we did, hoping that we did.
Sure.
But going into next season, pulled back like a freaking slingshot because in 2 years, this team has been rebuilt and is now on everybody's list of a future playoff contender. Then I don't know. Then you're like the people that like the hot wax dripped on their chest or something, and it's like burns you and leaves scars and stuff. Like you know, what is that word? A masochist. Thank you.
Yes.
Like you're a sports masochist. Yeah, I'm trying to throw you a life
Maybe
circle.
they don't want one.
Maybe they don't. I think you're right. I think there's people that just hate watch. I think there's guys like Jay that yell at us all the time about, oh, you got to go to break and stay on time and do your job. Well, that's fine.
Yeah, nice, dude.
We'll take a break. When we come back, let's switch to some A's. We've got all kinds of athletics that will want to talk to you about their A's season coming up, and that's why we're down here in Mesa, Arizona. Thanks to our good friends at Jiffy Lube for bringing us down here. As we said at the top of the segment, Matt Olson, Jesus Luzardo, Marcus Simeon, and Matt Chapman. You will hear from all of them next. Back in a couple. Sports 1140 KHTK.